money and property, the one thing they have in common is that they both burn. Every house we build is one day going to get knocked down. Every company we start is one day going to get closed. If we're not doing this for something greater than making money, it really is purposeless.
Welcome to Builders, Budgets, and Beers. I'm Reece Barnes, and I started this podcast to have real conversations about money in the building industry, the wins, the mistakes, and everything in between. I believe builders deserve to feel confident about their finances, and that starts by hearing from others who've been through it too. This industry can be slow to change, but the right stories and the right tools can make profitability feel possible. Let's get into it. Mics are hot, Hayden. We're rolling, baby.
All right.
Thanks for jumping on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Reece.
Of course. Really excited to jump with you. I've enjoyed getting to know you. Frankly, you and I getting to know each other over the last few months only, but you've been with Adaptive for a while. How long have you been on board?
I mean, it's over 12 months now. I mean, so yeah, we're, I think it was last fall.
Okay.
Sometime in Q3 that we signed on.
Okay, beautiful. Well, you worked closely with our CEO, Matt, and I just started getting involved with you because Matt has spoken highly of you. It's spoken, isn't it? I think
it
it's
is.
Spoken. Yeah, spoken so highly of you. And I think you're going to be an incredible guest for the fine contractors of America to tune into and learn a little something from. But before we get going, give the listeners a little background. Who are you? Where are you at? What do you build? Just some of the basics.
Yeah. Hayden Croxall, Croxall Construction Companies. That's our holding company. We have 4 operating entities underneath that. We've got Croxall Commercial, Croxall Residential, Croxall Painting, and Croxall Roofing. So we were really original in terms of how we named each of those entities.
Yep.
My dad got into construction back in 2007. So it's a really great time to kick off a construction company.
So what was the motivation for him to get into it?
Well, he'd always been a really successful entrepreneur. Through a number of circumstances outside of his control, we basically kind of lost everything. And so this was in the lead up to the recession. And I watched him go from being the president of an owner of a really successful company to everything's gone.
Damn.
And it was a hard season. I was 13 at the time. And, but I will say it was the most transformative season for my dad and for me at such a kind of key junction point in my growing up. It was a very transformational season for me watching him and how he continued to love his family, serve his family, show up every day, work hard. I mean, he literally went from running a 7-figure company to renovating houses in the lower income parts of our town for a friend.
Yeah,
I mean, that was what he did. But he did it because he wanted to stay close to home. He didn't want to get a traveling job. He wanted to be here with us during those key growing up years. And I watched him grow in patience, presence, and then over the course of the next 10 years, build a construction company, like mostly in kind of the commercial space, but to the point where he won Builder of the Year in 2017.
Nice.
And just really built a foundation for me and my brothers that we're grateful for. And so I did not, though, go into construction starting out. I had kind of the golden ticket of, hey, you can come work with me, son. And I said, no, Dad, I'm going to go save the world and be a teacher.
Yeah, there you go.
So I ended up going the teacher route. I started teaching back in 2016 and married my high school sweetheart in 2016. And we were going along, had our first son in 2017. Had our second son in 2019. And right around that time, Katie was staying home. And I realized that the teacher salary with a wife staying home and, gradually populating the earth was trending in the wrong direction.
That's right.
So,
the dollars don't shake out at that rate.
Dude, it got a little hairy there for a minute because we had a mortgage and and a lot of diapers. And so
Yeah.
ended up starting a painting company, not because I knew anything about painting. I didn't actually know what sheen meant, which
Yeah.
turns out is kind of like an important part of of painting. But I was working in an urban school, serving a largely immigrant population. I'm fluent in Spanish, and so I was teaching English to speakers of other languages, and and I knew painters because I was so involved in the Hispanic community.
Hmm.
And so I was like, well, painting can't be that hard, and if you paint it wrong, you just paint it again. So I figured it was the lowest liability. So I would um, launch my painting company on April Fool's Day 2019, and I would go drop off material at a job site, go to school, teach for 8 hours, coach. Then I was coaching soccer, and then I would go work on the job sites till about midnight. Sometimes I'd bring a student or two along, and then we'd
Yeah.
run it again. So that was kind
No
of that first.
way.
Yeah, it was it was a busy season, and Katie was very gracious during kind of those first months, and I mean I was working all the time, but
Yeah.
it was what I had to do. I had two little boys at home, and but that company kind of gradually grew.
Yeah.
And I was teaching at the same time, and so I was forced into learning systems, and because I couldn't be on the job site
Right.
during 8 9 hours of the day. And so really quickly got into different systems, be it with project management software,
Hmm.
uh, kind of different CRMs, and then started subbing out and kind of bringing on additional crews. Brought my brother-in-law on to help kind of manage on site. So I'd be teaching, and then during lunch breaks, I'd go drive over, check on a project if it was close by, or text my subs and kind of see where things were. So that was how things went for about 2.5 years. In the meantime, we had our third daughter, and then we started fostering again in 21. We got our now youngest son Kai in 21. So then we were at 4, and then he had 4 siblings, and so the end of 2021, I left teaching, went full time into entrepreneurship. At the same time, in January of 22, um, Kai's 4 siblings, now our 4 additional children, moved in. So I had a painting company, an exteriors company, and a wife and 8 kids in 1,800 square feet of home. So it was.
Okay. Okay. I just, even on that, there's so much in there. There's so much in there. But I think even to the building side, there's 10 people, 8 kids, right?
Yep.
2 parents, 10
Mhm.
10 people living in 1,800 square feet.
Yep.
Why does the average home hit like 2,200 square feet or whatever it is these days, with normal houses being 3,500, 4,000 square feet? Why? How was it a family that size in 1,800 square feet?
I mean, our master closet was a bedroom, our laundry room was a bedroom, our sunroom was a bedroom.
No way.
Everything turned into a bedroom outside of our living room, kitchen, and dining room. So that's how we managed. I don't. I think that our family sizes have shrunk somewhat over the past 200 years, and so maybe uh, the necessity hasn't been there. Now we did because I in 22 I started doing commercial roofing at the same time. I
Okay.
skipped this, but in 2020 Chattanooga got hit by a tornado,
Okay.
and so it was right in the middle of COVID. It was in April of 2020,
Hmm.
and so we were doing remote teaching work, and a lot of my kids didn't have internet, so there wasn't a ton that I could do. So I went out and did a bunch of relief work, and I saw these out of town roofing companies coming in,
Hmm.
and I was like, well, shoot, like these guys are just coming in for a payday. Like I know I can go find roofers, like,
Yeah.
and I actually care about our community. So we started roofing in 2020. And so I was doing some roofing jobs kind of all at the same time. Started commercial roofing, got my GC,
Hmm.
landed a large commercial roofing job here locally,
Hmm.
and then towards the kind of, I guess, August or so of 2022, I had my GC. We were turning down residential work because our painting company and roofing didn't really accommodate it, and my dad was doing commercial work. I
Hmm.
was like, well, there's probably a market out there for residential work. And so in talking to my dad, we were like, well, let's launch a residential company. And I was looking at my spreadsheet, and I was like, I think I'm going to make enough money off of this commercial roofing job where I could hire one of my best friends who was a PM at another residential construction company. And so I went to him and I said, hey, I don't have any jobs lined up. I think I can probably cover your salary though with the money I'm going to make on this roofing job. Like, what do you say? And so he came on in the end of 2022, and here we are 3 years later. So it's been a trip.
You need a documentary, first off. This is already just a kick-ass story. I'm even just saying, I mean, it doesn't, okay. A lot of my world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Construction accounting, finance, software, stuff like that. Very calculated, right? It's very calculated. It's very meticulous. It's very quantifiable, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like there was a lot of that involved, unless you're shortchanging yourself. But it doesn't sound like there was a lot of like, oh, well, the market says this, and I think that we can do this. And that. It sounds like you're just like, dude, it just makes sense. We should just go do it. Let's go do it.
For better, for worse, that's just kind of how I operate.
Which I think it's great. There's nothing wrong with that. I just think it's more of a testament to, I think a lot of people will get in their way as to, I have to have this perfect business plan, or I have to have X, Y, and Z lined up before I can do this. And you're just looking at this, like making decisions like, we've got the exteriors covered. We've got the roofs covered. We've got the commercial covered. The only thing that's missing is residential. I know somebody. Let me go figure it out.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's basically how it's gone. And I mean, ready, fire, aim is kind of my motto. As the companies have grown, I've had to bring guys in who help kind of tether me a little bit.
Sure.
We always joke that I'm the kite, and then the guys around me are the tree that I'm attached to, so that we don't just float away. But it's that's just kind of how I've been wired. But grateful for guys who help ground me and make me kind of, at least have somewhat of a plan before we jump in head first every time.
Totally. 100%. Okay. So we've got a lot of chew on. First, you made a comment earlier about you're completely fluent in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
How do you say builders, budgets, and beers in Spanish?
Okay. Well, we've got cerveza. All right. So builders would be
cerveza's beer. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, builders, good grief. I think through my trade vocabulary, but I mean, we would typically.
I'm putting you on the spot for sure.
Yeah. Well, hey, and I appreciate that. The guys always just say jefe, and so I'm just going to go with jefe. I don't know that I've learned that one on the job. They just say, hey, jefe. And then budgets. We don't really believe in budgets on job sites. So
that's right. That's right.
One, but so I
okay. I'm gonna look it up. How do you say builders? And you had your shot. Builders, budgets, and beers.
I know.
In Spanish. Okay, this is so easy. It's pesutos de constructores y cervezas.
Okay, there you go. Learn something new every day.
You got every day. Okay, so we've got 4 entities in the Croxall enterprise. 8 kids, a wife, brothers. Any sisters?
Yeah, no sisters. We did tag on a bookend in 2024. So there's 9 kids.
9 kids.
Yeah.
Okay. So legacy is there, or at least the opportunity for legacy is there. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so with the 4 entities, what's your favorite? I'm not going to do that with the kids, but with the entities, what's your favorite?
I that's like asking which kid's your favorite.
Okay.
There's things about each of them that are fun.
Okay.
The painting one, that's my baby. That's one that I started.
Yeah.
It was me.
What do you like about the painting?
Really nothing about painting itself.
Okay, so it's the business side.
Yeah, the business side. That was just where I learned everything.
Yeah.
You go in and look at a project and you say, oh, well, it's going to cost this much to do it. And then you learn on the back end that it actually costs twice that. And you look at it and say, well, I just paid a lot for experience. So I paid a lot for experience when I was with, the painting company.
Yeah.
the commercial company, that's where we absorbed our dad's operations, and so a lot of the guys there have been with us for a long time, and so there's that familiarity going back a decade and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where my brother, he oversees our operations there. He's my business partner at the holding level, and so that company is a fun one, just kind of going in and figuring out, hey, how do you market in a commercial setting versus a residential? Because those are two just completely different sides of the coin.
Mm-hmm.
And so that one holds kind of more of a, what I would say, like a business kind of esque challenge, because it isn't fully relational like residential is. Residential
Mm-hmm.
it's all relationships, it's all positioning, it's it. I mean, the emotional level of residential versus commercial are polar opposites, and so uh,
Interesting.
residential is fun. Extremely grateful for a lot of those deep relationships that we've developed with some clients
Mm-hmm.
over the course of our time, over the
Mm-hmm.
past 3 years. But man, it is taxing
Yeah.
on a level that commercial just isn't, because you don't have that same level of emotion. I mean, these are people's. It is their largest investment that they're going to make, and it's for their family. So you're tying it to their family, which is the most important thing. You're tying it to their money, and you put it all together in an industry that they don't know anything about. And
Yep.
you have to help them navigate what could be a year or 2 year long process where each of those are being depleted over the course of that time.
Yeah.
And so it is just, it's taxing and challenging on a totally different level, but I enjoy the challenge part of it and the relational component.
1000%. That was beautiful, by the way. I've done a lot of these conversations, and I've never had someone explain what makes residential construction as emotional, or like why it's so emotional the way that you did. That was fantastic. And I totally agree. But so is it just fair to like say that the commercial side isn't as emotional because we're talking about investors, we're talking about business assets, we're not talking about like this is where my family sleeps and grows up and we build memories in with money that I'm leveraging as a common person.
There absolutely is emotion on the commercial side,
Yeah.
but it's much more professionalized than it would be on the residential side. And what I mean by that is that you've got deadlines,
Mm-hmm.
and usually the person who you're dealing with isn't the business owner.
Mm-hmm.
It's somebody who's been put in a role where they're helping oversee this process. Now,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it is the business owner depending on the size of the project, but sometimes it's not. So there's pressure from this angle coming in on this person, so they're going to put pressure on us there, for
Mm-hmm.
deadlines and that sort of things and cost overruns and that. But it is not to the same extent when you're involving family, and your stakeholders aren't tied to it from a business standpoint where it's transactional.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much more relational, and it's also just a longer process too. Like
Yeah.
that's the nice thing about commercial is you can go in and knock out a 1.5 fit out, or $1.5 million fit out in 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
$1.5 million custom home is going to be a 15-month to 18-month process, depending on how many details are going into it.
Right.
And so you're stuck with that person for 3 times as long. There are 3 times as many decisions that are being made, and it's their home. So
Yep.
it just totally different kind of scenario.
Totally. Okay. So that's super interesting. I mean, which one do you prefer? Which fits best with who you are?
Yeah, I mean, I'm relational, and so I am I mean, to that point, it lends itself to sales, and so that
Right.
fits into my role with kind of the different, both sides of the company. But I love relationships, and
Yeah.
we exist. I mean, our mission statement is bettering the lives of families,
Yeah.
and so while we are able to do that on the commercial side,
Yeah.
that when you're building someone's home where their family is going to be living,
Yeah.
it's that much more kind of important and purposeful. And so I do really enjoy the residential side and that family focus that we
Mm-hmm.
have over there.
For sure. And this isn't to be like misunderstood as like Hayden owns a holding company and he neglects the commercial side, right? Like that's not what this is. The reason I wanted to ask is because I think like there's kind of like this like realization moment happening for me on the podcast right now to where it's like this goes even deeper into recognizing who you are as a human, right? and like
Mhm.
which avenues you should be taking. Because I think in construction and frankly, like all like forms of careers, like people try to become these things or do these things that they might not just be like built
Mhm.
for, or like it aligns with who they are. So I think like your self-awareness and your ability to articulate that is incredible. Just knowing that like you're a relationships guy, like you've got 9 kids. Of course you love families, right?
Yeah.
Like you're like one of the most genuine, authentic people I know. So of course you love the relationship side, right?
I
I think that's very interesting just to hear you explain it in the sense of what you build, right? Whether it is commercial or it is residential. And again, that's not to say that like commercial is getting neglected, but I agree. From what I hear, it's much more business driven. It's much more process oriented. Like when I have people on that work at residential home builders, right? Some of the most successful ones were operations people, project managers, site supers, project engineers at commercial contractors. And because they understand the process behind everything and how that world operates, when they plug that into residential, they see a ton of success.
For sure. No,
But
absolutely.
okay, that's cool. So one piece that I've been having quite a few conversations about this on the podcast, outside of the podcast, but I'm curious to know, how do your 4 entities play together? You obviously said they're under a holding company, but how do they play together? Are you
Yeah.
doing? Go ahead.
Well, so they all operate as individual entities, and
Mm-hmm.
that's something that's important to us. So we have leadership in each of those companies,
Mm-hmm.
and we want to be able to look at them as individual entities because we want them to perform.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, you can think of them as 4 different teams, and in terms of how they interact with each other, like painting will serve as a sub for commercial or as a sub for residential. Same thing with roofing. And so
Great.
they operate as vendors for each other. And so there is kind of this web that we're able to spread. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, right now we're doing a fit out for a guy who owns a company, and then we're doing a build out for him, or like a renovation on his house.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of component of having different entities does lend itself to some cross pollination and furthering kind of opportunities. But in terms of how they operate individually, they are their own companies underneath the entire organization. So there isn't necessarily a competition between the different entities,
Mm-hmm.
but the books are different. The AR, AP, all of that is separate because we want it to be distinct. We want to be able to look at reports and know exactly how each of those companies are doing from a health standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And then our holding company serves as the back end office for all of those. So that's where we have our bookkeepers. That's where we have our estimating team. And so each of those companies pays the holding company monthly for those services. And then that's where we get paid is out of the holding company.
Yeah. Okay. So that's perfect. Okay. So 2 things: IES and um, earnings. Like how that all plays together. Okay. The
Mm-hmm.
first IES, that's why you're so pro QuickBooks integrated. What is it? Integrated enterprise solution, IES.
Yeah, into an enterprise suite.
Intuit enterprise suite. I was
Yeah,
way off. I had enterprise right.
yeah, you had that
Um
far.
yeah. Okay, but so that's, you're very pro that. Why are you pro IES?
I mean, we're able to go in and have a consolidated view of all of our companies.
Bang.
And so, I mean, what they're doing, we were getting to the point we had 4 separate QBO accounts. You have to
Mm-hmm.
go into each individual account in order to look and assess the health of each individual company.
Mm-hmm.
Going into IAS meant that I can now go in and I can see a consolidated report for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so no longer do I have to go in and click between different ones. Additionally, when it comes to like journal entries and that sort of thing, due to, due from, all of that happens in one platform, as opposed to being something that our team has to go in and somehow reconcile between different profiles.
Yep.
It's all there in one place. We were at the point where we were having to start asking that question: do we go to a Sage? Do we go to a NetSuite? And IES kind of came in at the perfect time for us,
Yeah.
where we were able to say, actually, we can stick with Intuit, which is where we already are. And
Yeah.
we already trust them with our money now. So it makes sense for us to continue trusting them with this new platform. And we've really enjoyed it and appreciative for what they've done for us.
Totally. And that plays well with adaptive
Oh, yeah.
IES.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I
I'm
mean,
throwing you layups here because I know the
hey,
answer, but
listen,
I think it's important for people to hear because this is important shit. Go ahead.
I mean, I plug adaptive and IES all the time because
Are
both
you
of them
getting kickbacks
together.
from either?
No, I need to work something out though. Um,
Authentic. Hey, I want to provide value to you. I don't want to compensate my spokespeople though, because it needs
there
to be
you
authentic. We'll figure it out. We'll get. Well, I don't know. We'll take you on a
there
trip.
you
I
go.
don't know.
But no, I mean, if I see something that works that adds value to people, I'm going to talk about it. That's
Yeah.
just how. But I'm not going to go sell something that I don't believe in. I mean, part of the reason why I think I'm a good salesman is because I believe in our product, I
Yeah.
believe in our team, I believe in our offering.
Yep.
Same thing when I'm going out and talking about IAS or adaptive. I mean, for us, and this is the plug, but I mean, I'll just say it. When we brought on or signed on with Adaptive, we were interviewing for a third bookkeeper.
Yep.
So that's where we were. We had two full time or basically two full time bookkeepers. We were interviewing for a third because they were at capacity, and we were looking at companies that were growing. And we're like, well, we can't keep letting this stuff drop. We
Yep.
were on Builder Trend. We were using the Builder Trend accounting system, and it was, I'm just going to say it, or the ARAP. It was clunky. I hated that they would receive an invoice, they would download it, they would upload it, they would have to key it in, they would then have to download it and upload it into QuickBooks Online. And all I saw was inefficiency everywhere. What Adaptive did is it took what could be 100 clicks
Yep.
to get one invoice into our ARAP and draw package down to 10. And so
Where are
you
you
take
getting this 110? Are those actual? What is 100?
clicks. Yeah. So I'm talking about like clicks on your keyboard, typing in names,
Yeah.
like of vendors. And I mean, that's what it did for our company. And
Yeah.
so our two bookkeepers who were at capacity, we were interviewing for a third, they ended up shaving between 3 to 5 hours a week off
Yeah.
of their time with Adaptive. So that's 50K just right off the bottom line.
Right.
That we ended up saving.
Right.
And so, I mean, for that reason, I'll tell anybody and everybody about how great Adaptive has been. I mean, for us, we have hundreds of invoices coming in a week.
Yep.
And one, it's easy for things to slip, and that's happened before.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when our bookkeepers are getting all these invoices coming in, they have to somehow download and then upload. Like the opportunity for one mistake to cost you thousands of dollars over the course of a project is there.
Totally.
And so for us, it completely mitigated that risk. And on top of it, I mean, it added a lot of bonuses with the job costing and that sort of thing. So that's where we do all of our reporting right now is inside of Adaptive. And so I'm really, really happy with our tech stack right now, especially on the accounting and financial side of it.
Totally. Well, and I wanted to ask, thank you, obviously, for the plug. I probably need to reel that in a little bit, but point being is I think it's applicable to the episode because with really the theme of you running multiple entities, right? We're talking about IES. We'll get into earnings here in a minute, and like understanding how that plays together with Adaptive, I think is the important piece because when there's a lot of upside to the line of thinking that you have, which is I've got my painting company, I've got my roofing company, I've got my residential company, I've got my commercial company, right? And all of these things are kind of like feeding and playing into each other. And like, that's going to be impacting, but it's keeping everything straight and delineated is important. Right. So when you're talking about like the service side of the business, how do you just have the 4, and this is what I actually don't know. You've got the 4 Adaptive accounts for each entity, but then how does that work with IES? Do you just like map it to,
it just ties right into that profile. Yeah. So in IES, we have our parent company, which is
the holding company,
companies, and then all the other 4 companies in there as well.
Yep.
And so those 4 Adaptive companies just map right over into IES, and that's where we get our consolidated reporting at the holding company level. And we still have, we have payroll, we have expenses and stuff that come out of the holding company. So it's still a quote unquote operating company because we run our back end offices out of it. But it isn't a construction company necessarily. And so for that reason, it just lives in IES and acts as the parent company for those entities.
Okay. Beautiful. Okay. So no, that's helpful. And that's where I want to go with this next is the earnings side, because I did a podcast with just most notably with Will King. He's with High Cotton down in Alabama. Killer dude. And he was talking about what I think he stood up an excavation side of his business, right? And he was getting like excavation and like heavy equipment and stuff like that. And then he would rent the equipment to his GC and he would perform excavation work and stuff like that. Yeah. You understand like how like much that did to his bottom line, right? Not only was he like getting better, more reliable work and numbers from the excavation side and the scope of work, but he was also making higher margin work on his excavation side. How do you view it? Like, let's just start at like a very like top line function of, or top line, wrong term, high level
Mhm.
function of all these entities playing together. How do you view the earnings side, and how do you see that benefit your company by structuring it the way that you have?
So, I mean, we don't view it as double dipping because
Okay.
anything we do, we want to be fair to the client. We want to have the mentality of we're going to do this exactly how we would want somebody to do it to us. And so when we go in and one company is serving as a sub to the other, because I mean, for example, our commercial company may go in and do steel work for our residential company if we have steel work on it.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, really, almost all of the companies have worked under the other in some capacity.
Mhm.
And what we're not going to do is just white label it and then tack, our price onto it. We
Sure.
want to ensure that we're delivering value. So if we're going to hire our sub, our own company to act as a sub, we're
Mhm.
going to deliver the value that we're going to bill on.
Sure.
And so, I mean, from a financial standpoint, it's great because it ensures a pipeline.
Mhm.
Because every residential project needs painting, every commercial project needs painting. So we have a pipeline.
Yep.
But it also holds that company accountable because if I need to bring another painting company to service this project, we're going to do it. And
Yep.
so this company is its own entity and it has to ensure that it's meeting that value that we're promising to this other company because they're ultimately accountable to the client and delivering that value to the client. So for us, I mean, it comes down to that. Now, the reality is that if we were to go hire another painting company, they're paying somebody else overhead.
Mhm.
So we look at it as, well, how about we make that overhead and deliver insane value through using our own company?
Mhm.
So that's our approach to it. It's just it's an avenue for us to go in, deliver value, and increase our pipeline for those subsidiary companies.
Totally. Totally. Well, and this just kind of organically happened, right? Again, just to go back to the beginning of the episode, you were just like, I'm going to start with a painting company. Really, no rhyme or reason other than you thought it was like the most reliable, right?
Mhm.
The simplest
Yeah.
to figure out. And then you just start
Mhm.
stacking them together. How would you advise a builder who's listening to this? That's like, I own the GC. A lot of them do, right? They're a
Yeah.
general contractor. And they're like, I want to start going down the path that Hayden went down, or I want to start throwing in other streams. How would you advise they go about doing that?
So it's funny. If you asked me a year ago, I'd have given you a totally different answer.
Yeah. Okay.
Where I'm at now is I'm seeing our two GC companies with the potential to grow significantly over the next 5-10 years.
Yep.
And so the trajectory is really high for those companies and to operate lean by not having a ton of tools, a ton of we're going to have trucks and people, and we're going to go in and we're going to service GCs on these projects.
Yep.
Previously, I was all about diversification, having all of, building out an MEP company, having all of these kind of sub companies in house because I was like, well, we're going to make overhead off of each of these individual companies and do it that way. But I mean, as you start getting into larger and larger projects, you kind of realize, I mean, like we're bidding one house where the gross profit on it on a 2-year build would be more than our gross profit on it for the painting company for an entire year.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm looking, I'm like, okay, one project can facilitate what this entire company would produce
Mm-hmm.
over the course of a year. And so we've now switched to instead focusing in on our two larger companies. We're still going to keep the painting company, we're still going to keep the roofing company, but we're not going to go launch a full MEP company. We're not going to go launch an asphalt company, a concrete company.
Right.
We're going to focus on relationships with the best subs, and then we're going to push our GC companies towards a growth trajectory that we think that they're possible for, that they can achieve.
Okay.
And so that's how we've pivoted a lot from where we were. But it's more having been kind of that ready, fire, aim for
Yeah.
the first 5-6 years of my entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
We're kind of focusing in and saying, you know what, we've gotten over that initial hump of starting the business and getting the systems in place. Now we've got something good going that we can really scale. And so
Yeah.
that's we're honing in on more of a focused approach at this point.
Totally. Okay. So so essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, but the answer isn't run out and go stand up a painting entity. It's zero in and crush with your GC company.
It is.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. So so when you have builders that, like, let's say they're plateauing at like 8 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
8 million in top line, 10 million in top line. which is
Uh-huh.
actually 10 million is usually where it's at, right? It's like the $10 million a year guys, like they've gone through the 0 to 1, the 1 to 3, the 3 to 5, right? And then they get to the 5 to 10 and they're just kind of like, God, like how do I get into that 20, 30, $50 million a year business?
Yeah.
You're just telling them just hunker down, like focus on processes, systems, focus on, or what would you tell them to do to get
Well,
over the hump?
and we're not in the 2030s right now. I mean, we'll do about 15 with our residential being our biggest
Mm-hmm.
this year, and that company is on a continued trajectory.
Yeah.
But I mean, for us, it really comes down to building those systems and being able to duplicate yourself. I
Yeah.
think that's one thing why I'm trying to focus in more on individual entities as opposed to diversifying.
Mm-hmm.
Is every single entity takes time to build. It takes time to build the systems, the tech stack, the people,
Mm-hmm.
and but you can't just wind them up and then let them go. There's still that continued kind of evolution that has to take place, that continued investment from a leadership standpoint. And the way I'm looking at it now is we have an amazing set of leadership teams. If we continue to invest in these guys, what's the trajectory going to be there? And
Totally.
so diversifying is a distraction
Mm-hmm.
at this point with what we've already got in place.
Mm-hmm.
We've also got, we got some property entities and stuff where we have real estate holdings.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of looking at it saying, all right, what can we do really, really, really well, better than other people, and focusing on that. And so that's our plan in terms of how to go from a, let's just say, arbitrary revenue from 15 this year to 18 or 20 next year and then 25.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how we're doing it. But we also, I mean, I will say, like from a growth standpoint, we also aren't going at it from the standpoint of we have these revenue goals.
Right. Okay.
What we're really focusing on is building the best company for guys to come in and work at, where
Mm-hmm.
they're encouraged and challenged so that they can go home and love their families well. And because that's, I mean, the home, and going back to our mission statement of bettering the lives of families, the home is where the greatest world change happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's not some, government policy. It's parents loving their children well. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's our goal. We do that by facilitating, these build experiences for our clients. We do it by taking care of our subs and our vendors, and we do it by taking care of our people and investing in them, not just from a professional standpoint, but holistically. And what we've seen, I mean, thus far, Reece, and we're 3 years in. We'll wrap up this year the residential company around 8.5 million. We've already got that in the pipeline for 26, with room to add on more projects.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're seeing this trajectory from a revenue standpoint. That's exciting. But in terms of what we're focusing on, it's actually more of our internal culture, who we are as a company, why we exist, more than any other KPI or metric. Because I mean, at the end of the day, like money and property, they're the one thing they have in common is that they both burn.
Yeah.
And every house we build is one day going to get knocked down.
Yeah.
Every company we start is one day going to get closed. And if we're not doing this for something greater than making money, it really is purposeless. And so for us, I mean, the purpose has to be more than making money. And so that's really what our primary focus on. That's how we're going to define success. And if that equates hitting $30 million in revenue, that'll mean that there's going to be more guys who we can hire, who we
Mm-hmm.
can care for, encourage, challenge, and be able to send home to provide well and love their families well. So that's really why we exist, and really what our driving principle is.
Dude, that is awesome. And that was literally going to be my question, is like, how do you advise guys to look at the growth thing? And I think so many people, they're just, what's the top line number? It's just a tale as old as time. Any builder's just jumping at the seams, excited to tell you how much they're doing in top line revenue, but they're not talking about the bottom line, and they're certainly not talking about the culture.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And with you, you're just like so focused on building that culture and driving with purpose and instilling good quality people. That's where your results are coming from. When you hire these people, is this a part of recruiting, or do you think this is more about development internally? Can you take someone who might not like be killer on paper, but like bring them into the culture, set them into like the accountability, the expectations, the culture, and they can pivot. What's your take?
Yeah. 4 years ago, it was uh, it was the winter. It was December. I had four painting employees. So I was still teaching at the time. I guess it was the winter of 2020, and I had my lead painter, his right hand man, and then a former student of mine, and my brother in law.
Mm-hmm.
So two teenagers and then two experienced painters.
Yeah.
I fired my lead and his right hand gun leading into the spring season,
Which
right
is,
when like things are about to like pick up.
yeah.
And I remember thinking like, is this the worst decision I ever made?
Yeah.
Turned out it was the best decision I ever made,
Yeah.
because that commitment to our culture from the very start, from the onset, has transformed who we are as a company, and it is our people are why we are in any position of success.
Right.
And so we start with our mission statement of bettering the lives of families. We go through our values of faith, character, courage, compassion, and excellence. That's the filter that every single potential hire has to flow through.
Mm-hmm.
And we say, is this a person of work ethic and character? If you can nail those two things, you can teach somebody anything.
Mm-hmm.
But if I don't care if you've got 20 years of experience, you've built mansions in Montana, if you don't have work ethic and if you don't have character, like it's all for naught. And so we've made some bets. I mean, our director in our painting company, one of the best hires I ever made. He came. He had 8 years of experience in law enforcement, and then 8 months of work as an assistant project manager on for a production building company.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Hey, listen, you want to come run our painting company?"
Yeah.
So the resume didn't, line him up for it, but I recognized, man, he's a man of character and he's a man of work ethic, and I can trust him.
Yep.
And the dude's balling out, for lack of a better term. And it's just a joy to be around. And I could walk through just one after another, the guys on our teams, and every single one of them are just men of work ethic and character. And that's the difference maker. And dude, it makes a difference on the job sites.
Totally.
Our subs come to us and they say, hey, listen, I want you to know that the way your guys treat us is different. Our clients recognize it. I mean, there's a reason why we don't do any marketing. Like everything we do is just word of mouth, and not that there's not upset clients and not things that we have to navigate, but the way that our guys treat people, which is from from their hearts, from who they are as people, it makes a difference. And that's, I mean, any quote unquote success is 100% due to who they are as individuals.
Yeah, totally. I think I think there's a lot of stuff that that people can take away from this. And I think to even like devil's advocate of that is like, this stuff seems fluffy, right? Like it really, it's hard to quantify it, right? It's even like when you go through your principles, right? Or your foundation, or what was it? It's your mission statement and your principles, right? It's like you hear them, it's like every corporate company has those 5 things on their walls, right? With like the eagle flying over the mountains, like, you know what I'm saying? Like the whoosh, like that type of thing. They all have it, but it's the important piece is believing in it, right? And holding people accountable to it and creating a culture of people that also believe in it and knowing what that looks like and what it does. So to end this, what are some tactical things that builders can do to establish that culture and start driving that forward to see the results in their business?
Yeah, well, I mean, for us, it is an uncompromisable commitment to your mission, your values, because you're exactly right. Everybody's got the mission statement and the values. You can put them up on the wall, you can put them on a shirt, you can put them on a plaque, but people see through that. They can see through the fluff, and as the leader of an organization, you're like, it starts with you and everything's going to trickle down from you. And so if there's any compromise on that mission statement or those values, like people are going to see it and then they're going to be able to call it for what it is, which is BS. And so, I mean, for me, I mean, having individuals around me who hold me accountable to those values, because there are times where profit sounds a whole lot nicer than purpose. It just does. And I mean, I've got a lot of kids and mouths to feed. And so there are those, like, that temptation is there. And so having people who are going to hold me accountable to that mission statement and those values is absolutely crucial. You can't run this thing alone. You have to have brothers alongside you, both internally and externally, who are encouraging you and challenging you in that. But I mean, for me, like, I where I go, and this is tying into our first value of faith, like, it, to me, we're a part of something that extends our own kingdom,
Yep.
and anything that we can build. And again, property and money, they're both going to burn,
Hmm.
and I just have to hammer that into my head, and
Yeah.
that allows me to look at our mission statement, our values, and say, you know what, that's the filter that I'm going to use today. I'm not going to let profit supersede purpose.
Totally.
But it's, dude, it's day to day. It is hard, and you can't do it alone. That's what I would encourage other builders with.
Dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. Again, I think this is going to be an episode that that people might have to listen to multiple times, or even like lean on it as like a sense of motivation and like a sense of what can be, because again, I think, and that's kind of the differentiator, right? If it was so easy, you'd have all these fantastic companies out there, right?
Mhm.
But it's the ones that are exceptional that stick to these types of principles, that you can feel it in the work, you can see it in the employees, right? That's where business gets exciting. Hayden,
100%.
you're an absolute national treasure, dude. Thanks for jumping on the pod and sharing a little bit about your world.
Hey, thanks for having me, Reece.
You bet. We'll see you, dude.